They said revenge has no timeline, but in the streets, silence is louder than any threat. And when the silence breaks, it echoes. Ever since the tragic death of King Von, the rap world has been split between pain and paranoia. Chicago's O Block lost one of its brightest voices, and the man closest to him, Lil Durk, lost more than a friend. He lost a brother, a partner, a reflection of himself. In the months that followed, Durk's life changed. His lyrics grew darker, his tone more serious. Every post, every song, every feature, fans read between the lines, searching for clues. Was it grief? Was it rage? Or was it something else? Behind the cameras, the streets whispered about a plan, a move by OTF that wasn't just about music anymore. They said Lil Durk was done talking, that the message wasn't in interviews or tweets, but in how he moved, who he trusted, and what he built next. Every time Durk went quiet, rumors got louder. Every time he dropped a track, people called a warning. And now, with tensions high and old rivalries resurfacing, the world wants to know. Did Lil Durk and OTF create a strategy, a retaliation plan? Not through violence, but through power, unity, and legacy? This isn't just a story about revenge. It's a story about how pain turns into purpose, how loss transforms into leadership, and how one man used the memory of his brother to reshape the game from the inside out. Tonight, we dive deep into the untold side of the story, how Lil Durk's silence became his loudest statement, how OTF rose from the ashes of tragedy, and what really lies behind the phrase. Durk is striking back. This is not just hip-hop history. This is the other side of the war, the part the headlines missed. Welcome to RAPSHOCK. And in many ways, that's exactly what Durk did. He doubled down on his label, signing new talent, giving young artists from Chicago the same chance he once gave Von. He began expanding OTF's reach, launching clothing, investments, and collaborations that turned pain into progress. Yet, no matter how successful he became, the loss never left him. In interviews, Durk avoided speaking about that night. You could see it in his eyes, the hurt, the weight, the memories he couldn't escape. He didn't need to talk about revenge. His silence said everything. His way of striking back wasn't through destruction, it was through domination. Every chart topper, every sold-out show, every award was another victory in the name of King Von. Every verse that carried Von's name was another message to the world. You can take my brother, but you can't erase what we built. In the streets, that's the truest form of retaliation, to outlast your enemies. And as the months turned into years, Lil Durk began doing exactly that. Still, somewhere deep inside, the fire never died. The pain was still there, burning quietly, shaping his every move. Fans noticed that his music wasn't just evolving, it was transforming. He was no longer the same Lil Durk from O Block. He had become something else entirely, a leader, a survivor, and the voice of everyone who had lost someone they loved to the cycle of violence that he himself had once escaped. What came next would prove that the retaliation plan wasn't about revenge at all. It was about redemption. After King Von's death, everything around Lil Durk changed. The laughter in the studio was gone. The energy that once filled his sessions had turned heavy, silent, and raw. For weeks, Durk barely posted, barely appeared in public. But behind the quiet was something building. Not anger, not chaos, but focus. On a cold November night in 2020, the unthinkable happened. King Von was shot and killed outside a club in Atlanta after a brief altercation that turned deadly. The world woke up to shock, disbelief, and grief. For fans, it was another tragedy in hip-hop. For Lil Durk, it was something deeper. It was losing a brother. The days that followed were filled with silence. Durk didn't speak publicly at first. The internet filled the gap with rumors, speculation, and theories. Some claimed retaliation was already underway. Others said Durk was retreating, broken, and heartbroken. But those who really knew him said nothing, because they knew what silence meant. Behind closed doors, Durk wasn't just grieving, he was planning. But not the kind of plan people expected. He wasn't talking about revenge through violence. He was talking about rebuilding, making sure Von's legacy didn't die that night. He wanted OTF to become more than a label. He wanted it to be a movement. In the music industry, grief often turns into art, and that's exactly what Durk did. His next few releases were heavier, darker, filled with emotion and coded pain. Lines that once sounded like flexes now felt like eulogies. When he said, "I lost my brother," it wasn't just another lyric, it was a wound bleeding through the beat. Every time Durk stepped on stage after Von's death, the crowd could feel the shift. His energy had changed. The smiles were rarer. The focus was sharper. The man who once chased hits was now chasing meaning. He poured everything he had into his craft, carrying Von's name in every verse, every tour, every tribute. Still, the whispers never stopped. In the streets and online, people claimed OTF was plotting behind the scenes, not through bullets, but through business. Some fans called it the Retaliation plan, a mission to take over the industry, silence the doubters, and build a legacy so powerful that no one could erase Von's name. And in many ways, that's exactly what Durk did. He doubled down on his label, signing new talent, giving young artists from Chicago the same chance he once gave Von. He began expanding OTF's reach, launching clothing, investments, and collaborations that turned pain into progress. Yet, no matter how successful he became, the loss never left him. In interviews, Durk avoided speaking about that night. You could see it in his eyes, the hurt, the weight, the memories he couldn't escape. He didn't need to talk about revenge. His silence said everything. His way of striking back wasn't through destruction, it was through domination. Every chart topper, every sold-out show, every award was another victory in the name of King Von. Every verse that carried Von's name was another message to the world. You can take my brother, but you can't erase what we built. In the streets, that's the truest form of retaliation, to outlast your enemies. And as the months turned into years, Lil Durk began doing exactly that. Still, somewhere deep inside, the fire never died. The pain was still there, burning quietly, shaping his every move. Fans noticed that his music wasn't just evolving, it was transforming. He was no longer the same Lil Durk from O-Block. He had become something else entirely, a leader, a survivor, and the voice of everyone who had lost someone they loved to the cycle of violence that he himself had once escaped. What came next would prove that the Retaliation plan wasn't about revenge at all. It was about redemption. After King Von's death, everything around Lil Durk changed. The laughter in the studio was gone. The energy that once filled his sessions had turned heavy, silent, and raw. For weeks, Durk barely posted, barely appeared in public. But behind the quiet was something building. Not anger, not chaos, but focus. People expected him to fold under the pressure, to lash out, to crumble under the weight of grief. But Durk did the opposite. He turned inward, reflecting on everything he had survived. The losses, the betrayals, the nights when he thought it was over. He'd already lost so much: friends, family, and now, a brother who had just begun to live his dream. So instead of self-destruction, Durk chose reconstruction. He started with the foundation, OTF. What had once been a small label born out of friendship now became a mission. Durk began treating it like an empire, a movement built on loyalty and legacy. Every member knew what was at stake. This wasn't just music anymore. It was survival through creation. Durk gathered the team and made one thing clear: OTF wasn't going anywhere. Von's death wasn't the end. It was the turning point. They would keep pushing, keep creating, and keep representing the people who never got their chance to tell their stories. Soon, new artists began to emerge under the OTF umbrella. Durk opened doors for them the same way he once opened them for Von. It wasn't about replacing anyone. It was about continuing the vision. He wanted OTF to be a family that lasted beyond tragedy. As the label grew, so did Durk's influence. He started collaborating with some of the biggest names in music: Drake, Lil Baby, and countless others. Each collaboration was more than just a hit. It was a statement. It said, "I'm still here. I'm still standing." Fans began calling this Durk's Retaliation era, not because he was fighting anyone, but because he was proving everyone wrong. Every song that hit the charts, every show that sold out, every headline that called him one of the biggest rappers in the world. That was his version of striking back. It wasn't violence. It was vision. It wasn't revenge. It was resilience. In his music, you could hear the duality, the pain of loss mixed with the pride of survival. Songs like The Voice and 7220 captured that perfectly. Durk wasn't running from his past. He was talking to it directly. He rapped about loyalty, betrayal, and the thin line between success and destruction. He reminded people that even though he came from the trenches, he wasn't trapped there anymore. But make no mistake, the pain never left. Every now and then, you could catch it in his interviews. When someone mentioned Von's name, there was always that brief pause, that flicker in his eyes that said everything words couldn't. For Durk, the loss wasn't something to move on from. It was something to move with. Behind the scenes, Durk's business acumen grew sharper. He began investing in real estate, launching merchandise lines, and positioning OTF as not just a label, but a brand that symbolized loyalty and legacy. Every young artist who joined the camp was taught one thing. This is about family, not fame. Fans noticed a new discipline in Durk's lifestyle. No more reckless headlines, no unnecessary drama. He'd learned that one slip-up could destroy everything he'd built. Now, he moved differently, quiet, strategic, like someone who knew every decision carried weight. The industry noticed too. Where people once saw another drill rapper, they now saw a mogul in the making, someone transforming pain into power. His tours became more polished, his visuals cinematic, his message broader. He wasn't just representing O-Block anymore. He was representing every artist who had ever been doubted, every kid from the trenches who wanted out. Still, the streets talked. Rumors about OTF's revenge plan began spreading online. Some fans believed Durk was sending subliminal messages through his songs, coded bars that hinted at deeper meaning. Others saw it as nothing more than artistic expression, the catharsis of a man dealing with trauma through his music. Durk never confirmed or denied anything. He didn't have to. His silence became his strategy. In an age where everyone rushes to respond, Durk's refusal to engage made him unpredictable and powerful. In interviews, when asked about Von, he'd simply say, "I miss him every day." That was it. Short, honest, heavy. Behind that simplicity was a world of emotion. Pain, loyalty, guilt, and pride all mixed into one sentence. What kept him going was purpose. Durk had realized that his best form of revenge wasn't to destroy, but to build. To become so successful, so influential, that no one could ever question his legacy or Von's. Every show where the crowd screamed Von's name was a victory. Every new OTF artist that made it big was proof that the vision was still alive. Every platinum plaque was another way to honor his fallen brother. It was clear now the Retaliation plan wasn't about violence. It was about domination through legacy. And in that mission, Durk was unstoppable. By 2022, he had cemented his place as one of the most respected rappers in the game. No longer defined by controversy, he was defined by consistency. His music matured, his storytelling deepened, and his audience grew beyond the drill scene. For fans who had followed him from the beginning, it was inspiring. They watched a kid from Chicago's hardest neighborhoods transform into a global superstar, without losing the authenticity that made him who he was. But even as Durk stood at the top, the past never completely disappeared. The loss of King Von remained the emotional anchor of his journey, a reminder of how far he had come and how much it had cost. The war wasn't over. It had just changed form. And while the streets waited for blood, Durk was busy building an empire. That was his strike back. That was his revenge. By the time Lil Durk fully stepped back into the spotlight, the world could feel the difference. He wasn't just another artist chasing hits. He had become the voice of pain, loyalty, and perseverance. Every verse he dropped carried the weight of experience, and every success he achieved seemed to echo with King Von's name. The transformation wasn't just musical, it was personal. Durk was evolving right in front of his fans' eyes. He went from being a street rapper to becoming the symbol of what it means to survive the chaos and still rise above it. But what made this new chapter special was that Durk didn't do it alone. He made sure OTF grew with him. Under Durk's guidance, OTF became more than just a collective. It was a movement, a lifestyle, a brotherhood. Every artist signed under OTF carried the same hunger, not just for fame, but for respect. They saw what happened to Vaughn, they saw the pain that followed, and they were determined to make sure that pain meant something. Durk poured his energy into nurturing the label's talent. Names like Buka 600, Memo 600, and Duty Low began gaining recognition. OTF was turning into a factory of authenticity. Artists who lived what they rapped and who stood by the same code. Loyalty before everything. The fans could feel it too. They weren't just supporting an artist anymore. They were supporting a family that had turned trauma into triumph. Every OTF release felt like another piece of a bigger picture, another layer of a story still being written. Meanwhile, Durk's own music began reflecting his inner transformation. Songs like Aha, Piss Me Off, and 7220 weren't just tracks. They were chapters of a personal diary. He wasn't hiding behind metaphors anymore. He was facing his pain head-on. He talked about the paranoia, the sleepless nights, the people he lost, and the weight that came with success. For Durk, every bar was therapy. For fans, every song was a lesson in resilience. But in the streets, and even in the industry, people started whispering about something deeper, the silent retaliation. Unlike others who let grief consume them, Durk had turned it into motivation. Every time someone doubted him, he delivered a hit. Every time critics questioned his consistency, he dropped another project that charted higher than the last. Every move seemed calculated, not in revenge, but in legacy. The message was clear. He wasn't fighting fire with fire. He was fighting it with success. The symbolism became powerful. Every OTF concert, every mural, every lyric about Vaughn reminded people that King Vaughn wasn't gone. His presence lived through Durk's actions. OTF wasn't mourning anymore. They were moving. And as the movement grew, so did the myth. Fans began calling Durk the Voice, not just because of his sound, but because he spoke for everyone who didn't make it out. He gave pain a purpose. He gave loyalty a sound. Still, fame came with pressure. The bigger Durk got, the louder the noise became. Fake news, online beefs, and rumors of street drama that never seemed to die. But instead of engaging, Durk mastered the art of silence. He learned that peace was the strongest response. When the world expected chaos, he gave them calm. When they expected him to react, he gave them results. That's when fans truly understood. This wasn't just a revenge story anymore. It was an evolution story. Durk wasn't trying to destroy anyone. He was trying to build something that would outlive everyone. One of his most powerful messages came during interviews and social media posts where he emphasized family, faith, and focus. He often reminded fans, stay out the streets, chase your dreams. It wasn't just advice, it was confession. He was speaking from the scars he carried. Behind the fame, Durk was still a man haunted by loss. The weight of Vaughn's absence followed him everywhere, from private flights to sold-out arenas. He had money, he had fame, but grief doesn't respect success. Every night before shows, there were moments where Durk would stand backstage, close his eyes, and whisper Vaughn's name. For him, every crowd, every cheer, every light was for both of them. What made this era of his life so powerful wasn't that he escaped the pain. It was that he embraced it, molded it, and turned it into something the world could learn from. By now, fans had fully embraced the idea that Lil Durk's Retaliation plan wasn't about war, it was about winning. He had built a legacy out of loyalty. He had turned loss into leadership. He had transformed the idea of revenge into something positive, growth. OTF wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. The label's shows sold out. Their merch sold globally. Their influence reached far beyond Chicago. Even people who didn't know the full story could feel the energy, a brotherhood reborn from pain. At this point, Durk had become a symbol, not just of success, but of strength. For every young artist who came from the same kind of background, Durk was proof that you could make it out without losing yourself. You could rise, you could change, and you could still honor the ones who didn't make it with you. And yet, even at his peak, Durk knew one thing: success was never the end goal. It was just part of the mission. There was still more to build, more to prove, and more to protect. Because when you come from where Durk came from, survival isn't enough. You want your legacy to outlive your name. And that's exactly what Durk was creating: a legacy strong enough to carry both his name and King Von's into the future. But as OTF's empire grew, the outside world began paying closer attention. The media started twisting narratives. Old enemies began resurfacing. And while Durk had learned to stay silent, even silence has limits. The next chapter would test everything: his focus, his patience, and his faith. Because when you're on top, not everyone wants to see you stay there. As Lil Durk's fame skyrocketed, so did the noise around him. Every post, every lyric, every move he made was analyzed, debated, and twisted by the internet. The same platforms that once celebrated his success now turned his pain into content. And yet, through it all, Durk stayed quiet. That silence, though, spoke louder than words. Fans called it discipline. Critics called it mystery. But those who really understood, Durk knew the truth. Silence was his armor. Because in a world where every word can be turned into a headline, staying quiet is the most powerful statement you can make. After King Von's passing, the internet became obsessed with narratives. YouTubers speculated about revenge. Bloggers posted clickbait titles. Trolls flooded comment sections with rumors and assumptions. But Durk refused to feed it. Instead, he let the music do the talking. Each track he released carried fragments of his story: grief, survival, guilt, and determination. You could hear it in his tone. He was fighting demons far bigger than any street rivalry. He was fighting the weight of expectation, of being the voice, of representing an entire culture while carrying his own pain. But the pressure was real. Behind the scenes, Durk faced what most never saw: mental fatigue, anxiety, and the constant fear of losing more people he loved. He once said in an interview, "When you come from where I'm from, losing people becomes normal, but it shouldn't be." That line stuck with fans because it revealed the side of Durk that wasn't seen in headlines: the human side. Still, the media wasn't letting go. Every time something happened in the streets, Durk's name found its way into the conversation, even if he had nothing to do with it. Every social media post became evidence. Every lyric became a confession. And yet, through all of that, Durk's silence became his retaliation. Instead of responding to accusations, he responded with achievements. When people doubted him, he dropped another hit. When critics said he was fading, he sold out another tour. When rumors tried to pull him down, he built OTF higher. It became clear that Durk had mastered the art of emotional warfare. His revenge wasn't through anger, it was through endurance. To outsiders, that kind of restraint looked like peace. But inside, it was a battle. Because even though Durk had learned to stay quiet publicly, the pain was still there, eating away, pushing him to go harder, move smarter, and protect everything he built. He became obsessed with loyalty. Every friendship, every feature, every alliance, Durk evaluated carefully. He'd seen too many betrayals, too many friends turn into headlines. So he learned to keep his circle small, his moves secret, and his emotions guarded. To him, silence wasn't weakness. It was control. Still, it came at a cost. When you bottle everything up, it builds pressure. Durk began channeling that pressure through his art, but it also made him distant. Fans noticed that his interviews became shorter, his expressions colder. It wasn't arrogance, it was exhaustion. Because in Durk's world, every loss left a scar, and every success came with a reminder of who wasn't there to see it. The turning point came when he dropped 7220. It wasn't just another project, it was his most personal work yet. Named after his grandmother's house address, 7220 felt like Durk opening his soul, confronting the ghosts of his past while standing proudly in his present. It was a letter to his old self, to his family, to the people who doubted him, and to Vaughn. In that album, you could hear a man trying to make peace with his pain. He wasn't seeking validation anymore. He was seeking balance. And through that honesty, Durk's fanbase only grew stronger. They didn't just listen to his music, they felt it. They related to his story, the idea that no matter how broken you are, you can rebuild. Meanwhile, OTF continued expanding. The label began hosting charity events, giveaways, and community projects. It wasn't about PR, it was about giving back. Durk understood that if he wanted to truly honor King Von's legacy, he had to uplift the next generation. But the streets never rest. Even as Durk tried to move forward, drama followed him like a shadow. Social media continued connecting his name to situations he had nothing to do with. And while he tried to keep peace, not everyone around him shared the same calm. That's the curse of success when you come from struggle. You can change a mindset, but not everyone will follow. Durk's silence started being misinterpreted. Some saw it as guilt, others as strategy. But for Durk, it was neither. It was simply survival. He had learned that words could destroy everything faster than bullets ever could. So he stopped talking and started moving with intention. Through all the noise, the message of OTF became clear. We don't respond, we rise. Every new artist signed, every concert sold out, every plaque earned. It was part of a bigger picture. Durk wasn't seeking revenge on one person or one situation. He was proving something to everyone, that no matter what happens, OTF will always stand tall. This was retaliation through longevity. Because in the end, the loudest statement you can make is lasting longer than those who doubted you. Durk was no longer just a rapper. He was a symbol of transformation. A man who turned silence into strength, grief into greatness, and revenge into resilience. But just as peace seemed to find him again, the storm started brewing once more. New rivalries emerged, old wounds reopened, and whispers of betrayal began circulating within OTF itself. The same silence that once protected Durk was now starting to isolate him. The question now wasn't whether he could survive the outside world, but whether he could survive the world he built. As time moved forward, one thing became clear. Lil Durk had survived everything meant to destroy him. The hate, the rumors, the pain, the grief, all of it became fuel for his evolution. What began as tragedy had turned into triumph, and OTF had become more than a record label. It was a living legacy built on loyalty, sacrifice, and endurance. Durk had learned the hardest lessons life could teach. He learned that loyalty doesn't always guarantee peace. He learned that silence is powerful, but can also be lonely. And he learned that success doesn't erase pain. It only gives you new ways to carry it. But through it all, he stayed focused. Every studio session, every performance, every feature was another brick in the empire he and King Von dreamed of building. And while Von's physical presence was gone, his spirit became the heartbeat of everything OTF stood for. Durk didn't just keep Von's name alive through lyrics. He built entire projects that felt like conversations between them. When he rapped about loyalty, fans heard Von. When he spoke about revenge, they felt the ghost of the streets that made both men legends. And when he talked about family, they saw OTF, a brotherhood forged in fire. Even through the losses and challenges, OTF continued to grow. Durk started mentoring young rappers, investing in artists who shared his vision. He wanted to prove that the streets didn't have to end in sorrow, that there was always another way. His story had now become a blueprint, not just for success, but for survival. Lil Durk had transformed from the voice of pain to the architect of power. His retaliation wasn't through destruction, it was through legacy. Because in the end, that's the ultimate victory. Not to fight back with anger, but to build something so strong that no one can ever take it away. The war that started with loss ended with leadership. The boy from O Block became a man the world respected. And the name King Von lives on through every OTF record, every performance, every heart that still believes in loyalty. This is the true meaning of Lil Durk Strikes Back. Not with bullets, not with revenge, but with legacy, loyalty, and longevity. Durk's silence became his story. His pain became his platform, and his music, his message to the world, became proof that even in darkness, you can find light if you refuse to quit. No matter what the world throws at him, Lil Durk stands as living proof that pain can be transformed into progress, that loyalty can outlive violence, and that the loudest retaliation is success that never stops. For the young generation watching, Durk's journey isn't just a story about rap. It's a story about resilience, about how to keep your soul when the world tries to take it, and about how to turn your scars into symbols of strength. That's what OTF represents. That's what King Von stood for. And that's what Lil Durk continues to carry. If you felt that story, if you believe that real pain can create real legends, then you're exactly where you need to be. This is RAPSHOCK, the home of truth behind the music. Here, we don't just talk about artists. We uncover their journeys. The pain, the power, the purpose, everything that shapes the greatest names in hip-hop history. So if you want more stories like this, real stories that show the heart behind the fame, make sure you hit subscribe, drop a like, and turn on that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Every week, RAPSHOCK dives deeper into the untold sides of your favorite rap icons. Because every lyric has a story, and every story deserves to be told. Stay loyal, stay focused, stay shocked. Collision. This is RAPSHOCK.